What's up, YouTube? Today I want to talk about an interesting verse, and this is in Chapter Talaq, which is the 65th chapter, verse 12. And basically the way the chapter goes is it says, God is the one who created 7 heavens in layers, and likewise for the earth. So that's an interesting verse because, essentially what God is saying is that we all know that there's 7 layers of hell, there's 7 layers of heaven. What God is saying is there's also 7 layers of the earth. And now there's a couple of interpretations that we can derive from that. It could literally mean geographically, like land-wise, there's 7 distinct layers of the earth. It could mean that. But the other spiritual and esoteric interpretation is that it could mean similar to how there's other dimensions, within the angelic realms or the heavenly realms, or within, hell, that's a different dimension. We can't necessarily visit that. There could be other dimensions within the earth. And now these dimensions could be spiritual based, where we can't physically get there, but there's an interesting theory called the hollow earth theory. And this is where that there's actually a physical place that you can visit. And now what I want to let you guys know about the center of the earth is that essentially to get to the center of the earth, it's like 4,000 miles. The deepest we've gone is 8 miles, right? It might even be less than that. We haven't gone deep. What science has figured out is that within the lower layers of the earth, there's actually water, like there's oceans, and they have their own waves. So we're almost seeing like that there could be this own world. When we turn to other belief systems like Greek mythology, their belief is that literally the underworld is just that. It's under the world. It's under the earth. When you look at shamanic practices, they believe that you can go to the upper worlds and the lower worlds. The upper world means like heaven, like angels, with the heavenly realms, and then the lower world actually means really in the earth. Like literally, it's not like a separate, totally separate planet or dimension or weird space. You're essentially going into the earth. It's like Alice in Wonderland, how she went into a circle, a hole in the ground, and she went into the the lower world, so to speak. There's a concept in Hinduism, Buddhism, they're all kind of the same thing, really, about 7 Lokis, about how there is, layers within the, kind of like, they almost describe it as hell, so to speak, but it's within the earth. And so, in regards to the hollow earth theory, there's a belief, there's, kind of the belief is that you can actually get to this other world, through openings on earth. There's specific caves or places that have openings. Now, the number one people who say they've had actual life experiences with this happening is pilots. There was a pilot, I believe it was World War I or World War II, where he was flying over the North Pole, and he saw some areas within this, North Pole that just looked completely green, that were almost, and he just noticed that it shouldn't be there. There are some pilots who've claimed they've been sucked up into almost like when you're in the ocean, you get kind of sucked up, into a whirlpool or something. While they're flying, they get sucked up into like this big pressure change. And some people assume that the way to get into the center of the earth is at the poles or at certain places within the earth. Or some people believe the aliens are under the earth, or the Titans are under the earth, or even Jews. Some people say they're under the earth. I mean, the under earth theory, it goes extremely deep. And so, when God is saying there's 7 layers of heaven and 7 layers of earth. So the interesting thing is that when he's saying 7 layers of heaven, he's talking about it from a spiritual perspective. So if he's saying 7 layers of earth, I'm leaning towards a spiritual interpretation. It could also mean, it could have double meanings. It can mean physically there are just 7 layers of earth, of land. Another thing is there's a lot of people who have astral projected to the center of the earth, and what they describe is actually seeing beings and advanced civilizations. So people have astral projected there and seeing that they have their own ecosystems, their own people, their own weather systems. And so there could be, it could be a double meaning, or it could just be that it's only meaning that we're talking about a spiritual perspective. That within even our earth, their center of our earth, there is other dimensions there. And so, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, nobody really knows, but this is food for thought. This is something to think about. Is there really something to the hollow earth, you know, theory? Is there a reason why, you know, the, you know, old religions and, you know, religions that predate Abrahamic faith, although essentially, you know, we've had prophets since Adam was the first prophet, we've had prophets since then. So, you know, in the same way that as Muslims, we believe that Jesus never said he was God, Christians will say Jesus is God, right? It doesn't mean that Jesus is wrong. So it's the same way that I kind of look at other religions, even if that is Greek mythology. It could be that the way that people are interpreting it, in our opinion, in Islamic opinion, is wrong, whereas, you know, there was truth to it, but it got a little diffused along the way. So, you know, maybe there is something to the underworld concept. Maybe there is something to the shamanic belief that we can, you know, really go to the underworlds, and they say that's more of the healing area where people heal themselves, like their spirit animals, you know, your ancestors are there, etc., etc. You know, so there's a lot to this, as far as the underworld, as far as the lower worlds, and the purpose that it serves. Interesting also is that this surah, you know, this chapter, it's called divorce. That's what it translates to. And so I know within, you know, cultural perspective, when we're looking at conservative cultures, whether they be religious or an Arab culture, there's just belief that if someone isn't a virgin, or if someone has a kid, or if someone was recently married, or even you could have two couples that just don't get along for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be one person's fault. It could just be people are incompatible. Whatever the reason is, they just never want to get a divorce for cultural reasons. They don't want to get a divorce because they might be looked less upon. But what we got to remember is that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he married a lot of women who weren't virgins, who were previously married, whether they be widowed or whatever, or divorced, whatever. So, you know, that's something to think about in the holy text, you know, in the holy book where God is explaining his existence to people who have no idea about any type of religion. This is their first exposure to religion. For there to be, you know, there's a chapter called women, and there's a chapter called divorce, and they both talk about divorces. That should tell you that it should be something that's normalized. It shouldn't be something that is looked down upon. Everything is balanced. You don't want to just divorce someone because they're not making as much money as you thought they were, or because you're young and you had this idealized view of what relationships are, and then you go into it and it's not perfect and you want to leave. But at the other side of the token, two people who aren't getting along, who are together, that's going to go on to the kids. They're going to have problems. You're going to cause generational trauma. They're going to be in bad environments. It's going to lead to infidelity or people cheating and wanting to find another spouse. That's going to affect the kids when it gets found out, because it always gets found out. They're not going to believe in being, they're going to want to be promiscuous from that. So another, you know, it's interesting that the overall chapter is called divorce, but at the end of the day, you know, this is an interesting verse 12 specifically, that says there are 7 layers of the earth. These could be, you know, spiritual. It could be the hollow earth. It could be, you know, the hollow earth believes there's other beings, there's other entities, there's other aliens. When you look at some of the oldest, you know, cave writings we're even talking about, there's this belief that there are beings that are in the center of the earth, people who can astral project. Also the same things, there's societies there. Shamanic journeying, which is kind of astral projection, they believe that you can go to the lower earths. Even just pilots, World War II pilots, or people previously, you know, who were flying over these regions, so they felt like they got sucked into it. You know, it could be the Bermuda Triangle where people go missing. Maybe that's an interest to the underworld. You know, almost like Atlantis, the concept that there's a city that's under the ocean. So there's a lot to it. It's interesting. You know, I've read the Quran a bunch of times, but I kind of skipped over that, or maybe just didn't look too deep into it. But now that I have the other spiritual and esoteric knowledge that I have, I can look at that and apply it to it. It's really interesting. Just food for thought, something for you to think about. But from a religious perspective, you know, the actual chapter is called divorce. So from me wanting to heal my culture and conservative cultures and the Islamic and Muslim culture as a whole, or even if you're not Muslim, even if you're atheist or Christian or Jewish or Zoroastrian, I don't really care what religion you are, and you don't have to be a certain religion or culture to enjoy my videos. It's just basically God coming out and saying, you know, normalizing divorce, normalizing the fact that you don't need to be a virgin, or if your husband dies or you get a divorce or you have a child, it doesn't make you lesser. And as men, we shouldn't look at a woman who, you know, isn't a virgin, especially from a previous marriage as being lesser. And you know, we have to take care of everyone, because if our prophet is willing to marry someone who's recently divorced, we should do the same thing. So thank you very much. I'll keep trying to post videos. Give me ideas. Let me know what your theories are. Thank you very much.